Okay, everyone, if I could get your attention, please, we'll get our session started. So thank you all for being here. I'll do a little sound check first. How we doing, Bonnie, Crystal? I'm good, but if you're a Seinfeld person and we have a low talker up here, that's gonna be a problem. All right, so there are a few vacant seats up front, but again, I know Alan, we've seen him present before. He's got a good voice, and anyone else that's responding, we'll do our best to elevate our voices, but again, there's a few vacant spots up front. So first thing, my name is Mark Phillips. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the municipality. I see most of your faces are familiar. Some of you I know by name and some by face. Well, so tonight's session is about obviously the Windsor stormwater, and some of these slides you may have seen before, either in chambers or somewhere else, but we did want to give CBCL and you folks the opportunity to have a little bit more intimate setting where you can have the opportunity to ask questions to CBCL, Alan and Aaron, about the work that they've been doing. Because really in other environments, you as the public don't always have that opportunity. For the most of us, this might be the third time, we'll say, from the municipal world that we've seen it, but every time you see it, you know, there's an opportunity to pick up on something or learn something new. A few logistics on the front end. Washrooms are out in the hallway, I think to the immediate right. Sure, it's well signed. More importantly, exit signs or exits, if you do need one. There's one up front. Is there one on the other side you, Denise? No, so you can't jump out the window? All right, so we'll use this one, and I'll appoint myself as being the last person out of this room. But I'm not gonna check the whole hotel. I'm just gonna check this room and the bathrooms, okay? Again, we have a section tonight that we really want to preserve the significant amount of our time for CBCL, for them to do their presentation, and for you to ask some questions back and forth. We have carved off some time, and I think it's important to protect that time at the end of the evening for some opportunities in the back of the room for you to come back. If you're not that type of person that wants to ask within the group, Aaron and Alan will be at the back to answer any questions as best they can, and some of our public works team, if we can, to answer some of your questions around infrastructure and all that stuff. We also have the bio program, the draft program, and we also have the home flood protection pilot program, which are two additional topics that we're prepared for to speak with you in the back as well. If you have any questions about that, any suggestions, and so forth. Obviously with the bio program, it's still in draft format. It's still something that council is considering. So any feedback that you have, I think I know myself is receptive, and it may influence the policy moving forward. So CBCL and then bio and pilot program in the back towards the end. Now, quick introductions. Again, some of you know Alan and then Aaron from CBCL. Some members of our team are generally up front here. I won't introduce them all, but they do have tags on. We are public works heavy, as you would expect tonight. So we have Todd and Troy here in the leadership, and then the rest of the team here to support you. I won't introduce all the counselors, as you probably can easily identify them, but there's a majority of those folks in the room as well, for which I'm sure when it's all over, they're free to have any comments or answer any questions that you might have for them as well. Tonight is for you, and it's an opportunity for you to ask and engage with us. So maybe we'll start with that. Oh, one other little housekeeping. We have comment cards in the back as well. So again, if you're one of those people that would want to make sure that your voice is heard on paper, or if you're not comfortable one-on-one or within the group, there's comment cards in the back as well, with a box for which you can leave your comments there as well. Please be kind when you're making comments. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up to Alan, please, and he'll guide you through his presentation. We did have one question, Alan. We had a handful of questions that came in advance of the session, And I want to commit to making sure you hear that question before you get into your presentation. The rest of the questions, when we're done with CBCL and the majority of your presentation, then I'll bring out the other questions that I have, and we'll address those as best we can within the group as well. But they're more bio and or home flood protection pilot program or just decision of council type questions. They're not infrastructure related. So Alan, I know you have the benefit of seeing this, but the benefit for the group, the question could be pared down as saying whether there is a faster solution to address the issue. For instance, could the construction of a large detention or retention pond be considered in the meantime to help manage stormwater and alleviate pressure on the existing system? Question mark. Yeah. So I think, yeah, probably address that.
Would you like me to address that before we get going, or there's some slides that might help with that understanding, and we can always loop back to it?
The show is yours.
Okay. So if it's okay with everyone, I think there are some slides that'll help with that. We kind of adjusted them a little bit to be responsive to that question when we received it. We'll talk about the idea of that detention retention pond versus maybe pumping or some of the other ideas that we looked at as part of the presentation. So give me a little bit of rope, and hopefully I can provide the answers you're looking for. As Mark said, my name is Alan Ehrenholtz. I'm a municipal engineer at CBCL. I've been helping out Aaron Bailey, who's our manager of municipal engineering, with this project. So it's been a couple of years, a couple of different phases of this project as different modeling efforts were looked at. From first phases of design and identifying issue areas to now where we're looking at some preferred conceptual options with some good definition of the parameters around them and what would need to be put in the ground infrastructure wise to make them reality, and the timelines and costs maybe at a conceptual level that go along with them. If you were at council, you saw me give maybe a longer version of this presentation. There's probably 30 or 35 slides. I've cut that down a little bit today, maybe closer to 15 slides to give more opportunity for us to chat, answer questions, and go back and forth. So hoping this can be conversational. If you have a question, just feel free to raise your hand during, and I'm happy to make this a little more back and forth than just me speaking to the group here. So the first option that we'll talk about is on Stannis Street, in the Stannis Street area, and it involves pumping and storage. So there's three strategies that we generally look at when we're talking about stormwater management. One is diverting stormwater away from problem areas. Another is pumping stormwater away, very active. And another is storing it in an area that is desirable to store the stormwater and then releasing it at a lower rate or a lower flow rate after, when there's more capacity in the system. In this option, we looked at what is a quite substantial pumping station, 10 meters cubed a second at the peak rate. That is the max capacity. That does not mean it's always going to be operating at that capacity. It would probably only operate in those really at the big peak storm events. Then we looked at a smaller storage area to take up less space within the existing park, to give you more of that green area retained in this proposed design, this proposed concept. So that 600 meters cubed would fit directly below the surface area of the actual pumping station building. So not to take any additional area away from that green space. To pump that amount of water, you need what is the equivalent, or what is an 1,800 millimeter or a 6 foot in diameter force main pipe. So that is about this high. That's very large, but to get that out into the lake, that is what's required. We also need to get all the water that is coming into this area down to the pumping station. And to do that, we have redesigned a completely separated, and we'll get to that a little bit more later, stormwater system that culminates right before this with some 2,400 by 1,200, so that's 4 by 8 foot box culvert pipes. So 4 feet by 8 feet. So quite substantial infrastructure to get that water moving in an efficient manner to the pumping station and then pumped away. I know, hopefully this is clear for the folks at the back as well. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have a 1 in 5 year storm. So a storm that would theoretically only occur once every 5 years, or have the percentage likelihood of only occurring once every 5 years. With the blue and a little bit of red here shown, that is the flooding levels that we would see in our model. And we used real world calibration and rainfall events to identify if, or to help us understand if this was accurately reflecting what was experienced in the town in a 1 in 5 year storm. Light blue is very shallow, maybe an inch of water moving over top of the surface. Darker blue starts to get a foot or 2 foot, and red is over a meter. So very significant amount of flooding in those areas. So in this 1 in 5 year, you see a little bit of red, but a lot of that darker blue. If we look at a pumping situation on Stannis Street, where we've just implemented this pump station and all the pipes toward it, on the left-hand side, as you see the proposed situation where we tried to alleviate some of that flooding. What I'd like you to notice is over here by the curling club, we still have some dark blue in that proposed situation. So we haven't, with this solution solely, really provided a lot of benefit to the curling club area. But in the park, you'll see that there's a lot less of that dark blue. It's a lot more lighter blues. So you might still have a little bit of buildup in the park, but those heights are very much reduced. Aaron pointed out that I missed the comma here. It is not 726,000, it is 72,600 imperial gallons per minute, which does fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool in 7.5 minutes. So it's quite a substantial amount of pumping that is required in that peak rate. And to talk a little bit about that sort of storage solution, in the 1 in 100 year event, or a 1 in 5 year event, we can start with that. You're looking at about 13,000 or 14,000 meters cubed of storage. 1 in 10, the 1 in 100, you're almost at 30,000 cubes. That's quite a substantial stormwater pond or detention facility to alleviate that flooding. Now, is there room? It's something that we could look at in greater detail, but it could take up quite a substantial area in your existing green space or from other things that are existing in the town. So we did want to point that out because of the question that was received, and we can talk about that in a little bit more detail later. I know captured might not be the most clear term, but in this situation, it is captured briefly in that 600 cubes of storage and then pumped away. So we don't need that big storage volume in this example. Wrong button. Looking at the 1 in 100, as you would expect, this is a larger storm. You're seeing more red in that existing scenario, deeper flooding elevations. On the left-hand side there, with that pump implemented, that pumping station implemented, you are seeing more of the lighter blues in the park area, but again, the curling club is still subject to some of those darker blues and just a touch of red if memory serves. What I will point out is if you look down Albert Street here, sorry, not Albert Street, thank you, Wiley. Going to Albert Street, you have some pretty solid blue moving down that hill, which we might expect in a stormwater event. What we tried to do in a later solution is actually divert that water down Albert and take it away from the park. So looking at that third solution where we're not pumping or storing necessarily, but we are diverting water away from problem areas. So we're gonna see that large streak of blue in all of the examples here because the water does flow down that hill, but then we're gonna look at other options to take it away from those problem areas. This is one of those examples. So looking at Albert Street, we're looking at a diversion with some storage. So there's a property potentially available. It's actually a low-lying area. Currently, I was driving around town in December and I saw some standing stormwater in this sort of lower area, but maybe that's an opportunity to formalize that, increase the amount of storage on that spot, provide us with some relief with that storage, and use some larger pipes to provide effective stormwater management out into the lake, to the outfall. So not a huge amount of storage. We're talking about 1,000 meters cubed, not that 30,000 number. So you do, to get 30,000, to start thinking about how much area that might take. This is kind of the opposite of what we saw on Stanish Street. The same existing storm, 1 in 5 years here. Lots of dark blues and reds in that existing scenario. We actually see a lot of relief around the curling club, but we're not really impacting the park in this example. We've diverted some water away from the park. We've diverted it around, but we're not getting rid of the water that's still currently flowing there through your stormwater system. Again, a 6-foot pipe gives you an idea of exactly how big that might be. It's about my height. The 1 in 100 year storm, again, you see lots of reds in the park area. Still some flooding building up here now in the curling club. In the curling club vicinity, just a little bit of help to that park area. The diversion away from it is doing that, but we're still not pumping away the water that is collecting in that low spot. So looking now to think, what can we do about both of these at the same time? And so can we combine these two options and really see some effective relief? And this includes both upgrades. It's the most amount of infrastructure in the ground, but it does provide us with the most benefit. And so in that 1 in 5 year scenario, again, a little bit of red, lots of dark blues, but when you have that diversion with the pumping, you're going to start to see only lighter blues in that park area and almost nothing building up near the curling club. So diversion and the pumping and a little bit of that storage is providing effective relief. Again, we were debating what type of animal could fit in a 4x8 box culvert, and we came up with a deer. So to give you a sense of how big this is, it's about the size of a deer could walk up and down this pipe. And there you go. We thought it was a good example. 1 in 100 again, lots of reds in that existing scenario. In that proposed scenario, the curling club still seeing a lot of relief. The park seeing some buildup. You still really get to see some of that water traveling down Wiley, but again, being diverted away from the park. The big change we're seeing here is right now, water continues down Wiley into the park area, whereas where we're effectively able to divert it, yes, there's still water building up in the park, but it's coming from other sources. It's actually not going down that hill. So we're seeing effective results there. Something that we wanted to highlight is sort of localized flooding areas. And there are areas of town that are below street elevation and don't feature drainage into the stormwater system or the combined system currently. These areas, because of the natural topography, because they are low-lying areas, there's no outlet for the water currently. Because of that lack of an outlet, water will naturally build up. If it's allowed over curves or if it overflows curves, there's not an outlet for this water. So these aren't necessarily areas that are unfamiliar. They're areas that we saw water building up in during our modeling exercises, a lot of it around the curling club, a lot of it in the park. However, but if we can stop flooding coming out of the system, we're going to have a lot less pressure on these low-lying areas. In big storm events, water will naturally pool here based on what falls in those areas and will be basically up to the drainage of the soil to get that water out of those low-lying areas because there's no other outlet for it right now. Creek pipe, we wanted to talk about this just quickly. In a number of our modeling exercises, our goal was to take pressure off of this existing pipe. It's a substantial pipe, carries sanitary and stormwater right now. And in a lot of our modeling exercises, whether it was partial diversion, Stanish Street, Albert, all these examples that I've talked about, we saw a little bit of relief. The red being existing conditions, the other lines being these sort of partial scenarios. However, when you get to that fully separated condition, you've taken all of the stormwater out of the Cunnabull Creek pipe or diverting it to other places, pumping it away. That's when you see that pipe have capacity for the existing flows sanitary. So it does have capacity for what you experience currently. It's that stormwater event, that combined system that is putting pressure on this pipe and leading to these surcharging areas where the water is coming out of the manhole structures. So what does that look like? How do you phase this? How do you actually build a fully separated stormwater system? We looked at about 10 different phases. It would take a long time. I think that's been talked about. The question was, is there a quicker solution? With that Cunnable Creek pipe not seeing a lot of relief until it is fully separated or diverted, that is going to lead to, the idea that this is a substantial project. You're going to see minimal benefits, or sorry, not minimal, but you're going to see improvements slowly over time as the system is separated, as stormwater is sent to other areas, and there's less stormwater going into that Cunnable Creek pipe. But you're really not going to see that full benefit until there's a fully separated upstream system. The biggest one being area number 8 in the green on the left-hand side there. Everybody's interested in cost. This did show up at council there. Happy to chat about these in more detail. The stormwater pump station we talked about is substantial. We're talking about 500, 600 horsepower pumps. We're talking about 5 or 6 of them. It's a building, it's storage below. That's a lot of infrastructure. I know that's a big number, but that is the sort of amount of stormwater that we are trying to deal with in that low-lying park area. Again, in order to feed water into that pumping station, you also need stormwater gravity pipe upgrades along Stannis Street. Albert Street, we figured, was about 2 summers worth of work, so we split it up from up, and then the actual upgrades on Wiley and Albert themselves. And then a few other areas there when we kind of really looked at separating the full system, but this area 8 is the one that I highlight as the next most sort of important because it is upstream and needs to be separated as well. So that was, I think that's the last set of slides in the PDF. However, we do want this to be, I talked the whole time, I promised I wouldn't, and I went against that. If there are questions, I'm here to help. I'm here to answer them, chat them through. Aaron's here to help me chat them through, and we're hoping that we can provide some clarity if there are any issues that you wanted to discuss. Yeah.
In the diagrams, I noticed that the pump thing on status. Where's this catch basin going? We thought of them. We're talking about pumping it, we're going to put a catch basin somewhere. Where in the town or something?
Well, we would.
Alex, sorry, maybe you could. Repeat the question so that everybody could hear it. You were in the right tone, but you'll do that.
So if I understand the question correctly, it's where are we pumping? Where we're collecting this water, stormwater in Stannis Street. There's going to be a pump station with some storage in that park area. And then where are we pumping the water? Pumping out to the lake. Yeah, over the top into the lake. It's a significant, not an insignificant distance to pump. It's a large pipe to get it there. There might be other ways in detail designed to truly locate that pumping station. But right now we're considering it in the park and then pumping it out. Yeah, please.
A couple questions.
Yeah.
Is any of this data based on the last 2 floods we've had?
So we, in this, I guess, pictures that or the slides here, we're looking at 1 in 5 and 1 in 100 year storms that are sort of based off rain gauges from the area. So that would include data from those storms. When we were looking at our calibration, we actually did use, I believe it was the 2023 storm as an example as well. So we were using real life data, even if these specific slides were based off sort of more theoretical storm events.
So how do you know where all the low-lying areas are? How are you able to do it on paper?
So the low-lying areas come from LiDAR, which is flown, Nova Scotia completed the LiDAR program, I think 2019, 2020. So we have really good, really recent topography information. And we did spend a significant amount of time actually surveying town sewer systems as well to figure out where water was going, understand the flow paths, both on the surface and in the pipeline.
And then my next question, did you answer the question on Mark at the beginning of the presentation?
I touched on it. I could probably go into a touch more detail. Aaron, if there's anything you want to add on the retention system in the park, please do. Yeah, please.
So that's, I'm a quiet talker, so I'll try to speak louder. That is the system that we did look at back probably 2 years ago in a fair bit of detail. The storage, with that storage, you're still gonna implement your collection system to get all that water to the pond, because not it won't get there. So you gotta build that regardless of whatever system you use. Then you have to build your pond, which is quite significant in size. That area itself is very wet, high groundwater tables, so you have to constantly pump that area dry for it to be empty, so when rain comes, it does have capacity to store the water. Another thing we're talking about too was that wood store, combined sewer overflow, which was considered a pretty negative thing in the community that had combined sewer overflow sitting there in an open surface that people could access, or, and then take away the usable space with that area that no one wanted to use when it wasn't being used. So those were kind of the conversations we had about that back a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So that's what kind of led us into it. Well, let's reduce the storage size. We have to put a pump in regardless. Let's make the storage smaller so it's not impacting the use park. And then we pump the water away and get rid of it that way. So either way, it's the same infrastructure. It's just different size and different size for the different use. But it's the same principle. All the same things would be needed. Those big pipes that Alan's talking about, they would still need to be put in the ground. So it is not a quick solution. I think you build a pond, you water would go to it, that gets do by gravity on the surface, but all the other areas that they wouldn't drain them naturally very often. So it's not a short-term quick fix.
So the answer is there is no solution that is faster than, because, you're talking about, what, 3 years ago? But we're all flooding year after year after year, right? So, like, you're talking all this stuff about then, what, a decade down the road, but we all know this summer, we're getting hit.
Yeah, it's going to be, obviously, and then we can talk about this later, I'm assuming, but there's going to be a period of time, whenever you put in place, that's get built, constructed, to handle those bigger storm events that you're talking about. It's a lot of water. If you're talking about those big pipes, you're talking about, there was 80,000 gallons a minute of water you got to pump on that big storm. So, if you're out there spending money putting in something quick that's going to help you on a current, 1 year storm, it's money that's not going to, it can't be fixed towards a longer term solution.
So the answer is no.
Yeah, their answer is.
Somebody has to say
quick-
something.
No, the answer is that it's a significant amount of effort to fix. There's probably not that we have found yet, quick fix that would provide immediate significant results, right? That's where those 80,000 liters a minute, we're trying to highlight that there is a lot of water going into those low-lying areas, and then it's going to take. Yeah. Absolutely.
Can you speak to a little bit what the work would look like when it's being carried out, or what it would look like in the end? I know we talked about a pump house, but we talked about pipes and streets and properties that are encroaching on.
Yeah.
Just speak a little bit to that maybe.
So, in order to, we've talked a lot about how would you phase this? How would you bring this to reality? And there might be ways, once the pump station is built, to have some localized drainage in the park area, the low-lying areas that would capture water and then pump it away. Even to get to that point, you're putting a 1,800 diameter storm pipe in the street, force main in the street, and all these 500 horsepower pumps. So that's a big project in its own right, but it would be at a reasonable depth, based off the existing grade of the area and how deep these storm pipes have to be. We're talking about somewhere between 25 and 30-foot excavations in some of those existing streets. And so that's significantly deep. We're talking about 8 to 10 meters with shoring, potentially impacting local businesses while you're implementing it. There are ways to counteract that, to provide access during construction, but really deep excavations in public right-of-ways to get to the pumping station itself, impacts the existing infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of street renewal in general that would have to go into putting that in, because it is going to kind of take out, street by street by street to get those pipes in the ground. Yeah, sorry, I did see there was another hand further back. I just want to be respectful. Maybe not. Oh, sorry, over there, but we'll come back to it, I promise. Yeah.
Just a question, when you mentioned on this one that Stannis and Albert Street diversion present, you mentioned that there's still water coming from, and you did not elaborate, where we still have water coming up in the center of town. But my curiosity is, is it coming up? You know, because we are so water forest, are we getting Carnival Creek backing up into town is what I wanna know.
So it's coming, some of it be coming from the backup of the pipe on in Stanley Street, one low catch basin that water does come out of. But more majority of it is coming from overland flow. So it's coming down into the Stanley Street area from up King Street, up in other areas, the high points around, and flowing down overland. And then when
So
it
we
gets
have
there,
no water's coming in from our Avon River, outside or inside St. Croix or Avon.
not from the river itself, no.
Okay, just wanted to
But so
clarify.
the water coming down there is, it has no, you can't get into the Tunnel Creek system that's full. So it just goes top of the surface, it floods, till the current catch basins are freed up from the capacity that is not available currently in the system, because the high flows coming from upstream in the watersheds. So once that capacity moves out, then there's capacity for the localized water that collected there from overland flow to then drain into the system. Thus, most water is coming from surface flow, not from backup of the combined sewer into the area. There is some of that for sure.
The rest, we have salt water.
Okay, so right now, there's no connection directly. There's an overflow at the pump station, but that's pumped out, no, it's gravity overflow. But there's check valves that keep the water coming backward. At pump station down by pump station 1.
Yes, but Carnival Creek hasn't pumped in.
At the end of it, there is one. So that ties into a gravity sewer normally. You thought you want to speak a little more, but when high flow events, that surcharge is going to get pumped up into the system. And that's really going to be gravity from there. Do you want to add to that thought? Yeah. There is no direct connection to the river for that.
You're talking about the high density of these pumps. They're going to be constant, well, but you have to turn that fan off.
No,
Is there a noise factor involved in that?
so the question was about, these are significantly sized pumps. Is there gonna be a noise concern? These will only go on in significant rain events. And they would be, programmed, I suppose, to respond based on how much inflow there is. So, in a 100-year storm, you're probably hearing the rainfall coming down because it's gonna be pretty significant rainfall, maybe not these pumps. I wouldn't anticipate there being a significant storm by noise impact. Good question. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please. Yeah, we'll get to you. We'll go through it. We're going through it.
when was the last time that, the 100-year storm statistics or standards were upgraded? And I guess maybe we'll follow that up with, if this is going to take 20-25 years to accomplish,
Yeah.
are we going to have to upgrade those standards again within that time frame? I
So,
mean, we are in a climate crisis.
Yep.
And, the politicians are the only ones that believe that it's not a problem. But, I'm not concerned with that because your diagrams there are as of today.
they include a climate change allowance. So they are upgraded every couple of years. Every time there's a significant storm like 2023, Environment Climate Change Canada is going to be trying to collect that data and upgrade their projections. There is a limitation to every projection. The West Hants design guidelines have a certain allowance on top of what is, again, the rain that we've seen to project out. And we took, I think, an even more conservative approach by adding even more to that. So I can't say with any sort of certainty whether you have to upgrade them or not. We tried to do industry best practice and allow for that additional, again, it's a range, it's a probability, allow for that additional chance of higher flows in the future. But again, in 25 years, we might not be able to predict how big those storms could be today. We just have that projection of what we think they could be. This 25 years ago was significantly different than it is today as well. So we're doing our best to take that into account.
Okay, so the things that we're looking at here, do they have like a 20-year projection? Is that what you're saying?
29.
So basically, we're looking, what we're seeing there should cover us for at least the next 20 years or
Yeah.
so.
So we try to take into account the design life of the infrastructure, so the pipes would be 75 years or so, the pumps would have to probably be replaced more frequently, but the building would still be there. So the goal would be that we take into account the design life of the infrastructure.
And some of the other infrastructure that you're putting in, like holding ponds and a few other things. Are they designed, or will you be able to upgrade those if in fact this whole system, our weather system gets worse? Can you easily modify those holding ponds and other things to look after whatever unexpected the volumes are gonna be coming?
So the pump station itself, we could design very easily with additional space for future pumps to be added on. And based off how the system is separated, and that's gonna take time as well, you wouldn't actually need to put all 6 pumps in or 5 pumps in right away. You might put 1 in now, and as you continue to break out the system or separate the system, then you add a second one and then a third one. So that could be designed in absolutely very easily. Some of the solutions and like the storage on that Albert Street spot is limited by availability of land. So some of them will be more challenging to upgrade or to increase the size of. The reason we take a look at those projections is, hopefully a 4x8 pipe, this 1200 by 2400 pipe is going to last through that 75 years. So you're not going to need to say you put it into ground in 5 years from now, and then in 10 years after that, you're already replacing it. The goal is that it is sized for that 1 in 100, 2100 year, year 2100, 75 years from today, storm. Anything to add there? No. Yeah. There. I think just back on the right here.
Oh, and how that transducer that's been discussed and installed and you know that it's working correctly, is that our
Transducer.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
looking to see what the maximal output is at the overflow site.
The maximum outflow for just,
Up to 1800 amp.
Okay, so the 1800 diameter force main, it's that 72,600. That's the number we got to with the storms we have today. That doesn't quite exactly go to that 10 meters cubed a second. 10 meters cubed a second, I think works out to just over 120 actually, if you do the math to imperial gallons per minute. So there's space or there's capacity in what we designed for, again, actually even larger storms there. Maybe again, you phase in how those pumps come, but the transducer, sorry, I'm not sure I follow the question.
So I can answer the
Yeah, okay,
transducer. So the transducer is, it actually tells us the level of the water in the pumping station. So it doesn't actually activate anything, it just tells us on SCADA where it is when it's getting close to overflow. So it's basically just it's just a tool in there to say, hey, it's getting close. So it is working, yes.
So it doesn't tell you, say, the duration of the overflow or anything.
Yeah, so we can, yes, so it does, so we can trend that back. So for where the level is, how long the level was there. And it also tells it calculates how much volume leaves. So if it does overflow, it calculates the volume.
And what's the maximum volume that can go? Like what would be the maximum we could relieve from that system?
I don't know, the pipe I think is 30 inches. 36 inch, but the actual volume, I don't know.
So is that at pump station 1, sorry?
Yeah.
It's at pump station.
That's the overflow at pump station 1.
So in 2021, there was statement about the 2030 deadline to eliminate CSOs. So what's the repercussion to the municipality for not meeting that deadline? Is there
That answer I don't know.
why, like what happens?
you're asking us, what happens if we eliminate, or should we be eliminating every ounce of the CSO?
Well, I was saying in 2021, in council committee, there was a statement made, under the WSDR, this is 2030 deadline. So if that was statement was made, what happens if we obviously can't meet that deadline? We can determine that, but what's the repercussion for not meeting the deadline?
Well, that's that question. But I think most infrastructure and public works related people would say you're probably very likely gonna have some type of overflow in your system. It has to go somewhere when it's overwhelmed, and that is the best of the worst versus it being discharged and back up through the system or other places, so. But we can follow up that question. Client's question. Infrastructure, I wanna let the infrastructure keep rolling here, it's going good before we get into the other ones.
What we're looking at here is, an overall of what if type of thing.
Hmm.
But, one of the big problems we have in the lower reaches of this whole system is that we've got a combined sanitary and storm sewer. Now, are you able to give us some insight into when the scale of that is going to change? Is sort of Stannis Street sort of on the top of getting that fixed, and how is, when are we going to get those two flowing systems separated?
I think we could speak to maybe the level of effort required to install all that infrastructure. We sort of saw it as 3 or 4 or 5 year programs. You know, there's that, but that's sort of just construction wise, what is feasible over a given period of time. Not to speak to sort of implementation timelines or anything like that. So, you know, you would receive, and I guess the rest of the slide is actually this one. You can see as you start to separate the system, then the line comes down slowly, but it does take a significant, you know, separation or diversion through, you know, to get that water out of that pipe, or stormwater out of that pipe, so that it is not a combined anymore, it's just sanitary flow. Yeah.
Well, when might you predict that that information will be available to us? Because some of those areas in the lower reaches, I mean, every time there's a storm, that sanitary stuff flows everywhere, into houses and parks, and,
Yeah.
so it's important to know what the timeline is on that. And if it's an extended timeline, then maybe we can look at other options. So it's important to know, you know, when that might happen.
Timeline is based on two things. One is how fast can you build it, one is how much money you have to spend. So the money question, I guess, there isn't any money right now for capital infrastructure, I'm wrong. But that's the big one. Like, so coming up with $70 to $110 million to implement something takes a lot of doing bargaining with the federal government, provincial governments, all those, that takes time. They're not gonna give it to you all at once, they'll give it to you in pieces. So that's really what's driving the schedule is the availability of funds to capitalize and invest in.
You have that design laid out so that you can present it to the municipality and say, this is what needs to be done, and then they're gonna chase the money.
So the next step would be to developing the overall phasing approach of the project. We have the phases laid out here now. What makes sense for first, second, third, fourth? And then what's the big enough, what's the reasonable size chunk of a project that can be done by the municipality in a typical year? And then phase that out and put it over a timeframe it's gonna take to do it based on those discussions. And that'd be the next phase, to kind of lay that out, a little more detail into some of the designs and that kind of stuff, and lay it, and finalize some things around that. And then you'd have what they call a shovel-ready project that you can implement.
I think that what we have shown, and not all of it is shown here, there's a lot more modeling heavy than infrastructure heavy, but to accurately model, you do need some level of design to be able to feed into the modeling software. You know, it'd be useful for to start conversations for sure. But there would be more design required before a contractor could go and construct it. So there's sort of we're in a conceptual phase right now.
Okay, well, I don't want to dominate the room,
No.
but this is important.
Yeah.
And, so I guess it's, when can that information be available? So the municipality can then start making decisions on how they want to fund this, and, you know, which is going to get done first. Yeah, you know as well as I do, it takes a while to chase that money. And federally, I mean, geez, it could be another 3 years. Anyway, guess, when is that available? So they can actually look at this and say, this is first step, second step, third step, and we're going to chase the money.
The information's there now, start those conversations, there's enough layout done, enough budgeting done that a job project could be presented. And then start the conversation around, well, how much are you willing to give to us as our initial chunk of money? And that would actually help guide what we could design in the initial, there's some back and forth on that, how that lays out, so. We'll probably in the background is develop something based on a set amount per year or something like that. And that'll have to be adjusted based on what we awarded to funding. That's a lot of negotiation with the Polycon.
I think maybe what I'll add to that is what we presented today was a certain order. We said, okay, here's Stannis Street and a pump station, because even though it's maybe the biggest individual numbers for capital expenditure, provides a significant amount of benefit to the areas that you're speaking to. Then we presented Albert Street and then the combined option. Actually, how we designed it or how we modeled it was we started with finding a solution that worked, the final sort of complete system, and said, how big does everything have to be to actually provide that significant benefit at the end? And then now let's backtrack and say, what if we did this piece? Or what if we did that piece? So some of that phasing we've looked at, and that's what Aaron's speaking to, is like that can be used to start those conversations with government. We haven't said you need to do this one first or you need to do that one first. I don't think that's within, that's not our power. We don't, we don't speak for the municipality here. But we tried to present as best we can. Here's what happens if you do this. Here's what happens if you do that. Here are the projects that you could pursue. And then, that way we can go do detailed design based off the funding that's available. Hopefully that helps your answer or your question. We'll come back. Yes, please.
Me?
Yeah.
So by doing this piecemeal, are we moving the problem somewhere else? So for instance, if you focus on standards first, is it going to create problems elsewhere?
That's by doing Stannis first, actually it helps that problem, because you're putting all the pipe in Stannis Street, everything to accommodate the future flows. So the capacity, it'll actually be oversized, and then for the first number of years, until everything catches up.
That's why we did look at it separate. What happens if we do this and just this piece? What happens if we do just this piece and we get those answers, right? So that's kind of some of the imagery we were showing there. At the back in the hat there, had your hand up there.
Is there ever a time when the 1 in 5 year storms? Like, is there ever a time where it's too high? It's too high, that all the water going there is gonna be a problem.
That's one of the biggest issues with that area now, the potential for that water to be high, and then it can't drain at all. That's what led us to what we're doing now with the storage and the pumping.
Okay.
So that means there's no gravity connection into the lake area to come back into the area.
Okay.
So we can pump into the lake no matter what level it's at, as long as it doesn't come across the old train bridge. It'll stay on that side, no the lake. So that's what led us to
When the
that.
lake is too high, there's enough capacity to hold the water temporarily until.
Oh, we just pump into the lake, that's what we would do.
Yeah.
So the lake level, theoretically, can get to elevation 6, the ground level then around Stannis Street can be as low as 5. Those are 3 foot difference, they're a meter difference. So that gives the availability to pump out even when the lake dies.
And then the pumping is an active option. It will continue to pump.
Right.
Albert Street was a gravity pipe all the way out to the outfall, and we did consider that 6-meter elevation in the modeling, so that the system upstream has the capacity to temporarily hold the water, and then as the lake water comes down or what have you, then it lets it out over time. The one storage area we looked at on Albert Street had to stay, we wanted to go bigger, but it can't go below 6 meters, otherwise there'll always be water in it, or there's the risk, I suppose, in that high water event of there being water in it. So we actually had to keep it higher to make sure that it served that exact purpose. Yeah, sorry.
That just answered my question, like, what I see on the chart, the lowest point would be somewhere around 6 meters.
If this,
Below ground,
so 6 is here.
so we would go somewhere about 10 meters deep or 12 meters.
So that's
From the
that's-
right to left. On the left hand side would be the lake,
the
right?
lake over there, exactly.
So, okay, what's the gradient approximately?
As you can see, this is the Cunnible Creek pipe, it is an existing pipe. It's maybe experienced some settlement over time. These pipes aren't very uniform. They've kind of gone up and down, so it's not a consistent grade. Some of the bigger pipes that we had to look at for Albert Street and for Stannis Street had to be run at very flat gradients, 0.5%, 0.4%, to keep them from going too deep. You know, we talked about 30-foot excavations earlier. Didn't want to go to 35 or 40. So we did have to run them fairly flat to keep them above the sort of, again, they're not all above 6 meters. They're obviously in the ground. So some of them are below that 6 meter elevation. However, by that pumping action, you're forcing the water out. You're keeping those pipes with capacity during those storm events, and it's less dependent on the level in the lake than it is currently. But yeah, it is very low in the existing condition for sure.
And the digging would start from the right to the left.
Yeah, sorry. This is probably the best one. You would start most likely with this area. That's well, again, most of it's what we're sort of talking about. Not to say that anything's been finalized, but Stannis Street, again, if you start there or you start here on Albert and Wyman. Those are sort of the two areas we think provide the most benefit. They see the most challenges currently. Some of these other areas, you know, they're not going to provide you that benefit as much as these two areas will. And then the next most important one is area 8 here in the green, just because it is upstream and feeds into that Stannis Street area. So that's kind of what we've conceptualized. But again, does this have to go first or this have to go first? No, to your colleague's point there, by doing one or the other, you're not going to make another area worse. They are, you know, either could be done.
But realistically, it's kind of a challenge in terms of logistics for the community and to go on traffic all the time. Because the period of 5 years, every year would be some different challenge going on and down. So there.
I'll just add something to that too. There's two flow paths into the trouble area down here. One is overland flow, which is all the flow that Albert Street trying to divert from Albert Street. And the flow coming off of here, all flowing down here and gathering here in the low area. The other flow is, like Al mentioned, is the storm pipe flow that's coming in through here. So this flow affects the pipe to the Colombo Creek, because that's where that's going, in the Colombo Creek and out to the pump station. So what's happening is that all this flow getting into the Colombo Creek is taking all the capacity in the pipe, and all this overland flow that comes down through here, it can't enter the pipe, and it's flooding on the top of the ground. So once all this flow passes through, and it starts to reduce the pressure in this pipe, this starts flowing into it. And then that's when the surface water starts draining away. So our first step was to get rid of capacity in the system, and collect the surface water, collecting the water that may back up in the system onto the street and prevent after backing up, and get that out away from people off the surface. And then the next step would be we can divert water out of here, and it will help with the surface flooding, but it's not really going to impact much on the Colombo Creek pipe. But if you start diverting this one, it will have an impact on Colombo Creek now because there's nothing on the surface trying to get in. Whatever we remove from here is going to reduce the pressure on the creek pretty substantially. So that's the kind of thing we'll have to look at and figure out what makes the most sense from a dollar point of view to address first, second, third.
Please, yeah.
Just looking at the schedule, is there a time frame yet for CDCL to elevate this to a class B estimate to be conceptual?
Sorry, go ahead.
So I would say we have a class D listed now.
Yeah.
We could probably up a level with the final estimate. We did do a complete design of the whole storm system, size every pipe in every street.
Yeah.
So we know all that kind of, those quantities now, so we could probably update that with our next estimate. Include all that.
Where do you go in class D there?
Not class B, but yeah.
Quickly go to class C, where we have some unknowns, and where I think we're on the same page about like go into that class B, that level of design and reinstatement. We're making some assumptions based off the depth of these storm pipes about how much impact that's going to have to the streets. So you can imagine if we need to put a storm pipe 30 feet below, everything that's above it right now, if there's conduit for electrical, if there's existing storm, existing water main, all that's going to be impacted. So we have assumptions, you know, based off what we know from the storm pipe. But to go to a class B or a class A, we probably want a better understanding street by street of what the impacts are in a detailed way, right? So
Right, so how that can unfold, my understanding is for anybody, before they can talk to the federal government, secure funding, they need to talk. That's how it's always been. Otherwise, there's a hypothetical conversation based on the federal. But when they have a class B in hand, and they have a serious conversation.
Yeah, that's the conversation, I'll see what kind of level they would want. But normally with a, even class C, they're okay to start negotiating a D even, they can negotiate the overall project.
Yeah.
And then you would say, well, let's focus on this phase first, then you start developing that phase. And that's when you develop those cost estimates that you're talking about. And you get those more refined costs and then confirm the budget with the feds as to what it is now. And that's kind of the process that would happen.
there's your hand, please.
It's got nothing to do with this, but we watched a program on TV that they did in Vancouver. They had a lot of rain coming down one of the streets, and I think it was made Russell.
North Vancouver, I know the street. I'm from Vancouver, so I know the street.
So they did like flowing down the water system.
Mhm.
Took half of the street, made it a one-way street, on half. And it apparently is working quite well.
Mhm.
We looked at that ourselves and we thought water coming down King Street, coming into the catch basin of water coming down Wiley,
Mhm.
those kind of projects would probably work. Have you looked at any of that at all? Or-
So I think when you're looking at sort of like street by street, surface works, swales, and some of the other naturalized stormwater solutions, we haven't looked at that level of detail yet, but there would be opportunities in a detailed design phase to think about what sort of, and this goes to that class B again, what is available for terms of width within the right of way? Is there appetite within the municipality to go to a one-way? Those types of questions to then include that in the design. The amount of water we're dealing with, we didn't think that, individually modeling that sort of system would provide the level of benefit required. And the thing about that North Vancouver system, I believe it was North Vancouver, there's a few in Vancouver as well, is those are just storm. So when you're looking at a combined system, you still have to separate some of those areas. You really, and we talked about the retention pond, how much appetite would there be for that combined nature sewage to be in the surface? So you're still looking at a separated system, but it's more localized than larger picture. Anything to add there, Aaron?
We've been living in that area for 50 years.
Mm.
And it's only in the last three, with the bigger storm in 21, I think,
Mhm.
that the sewer issue
Yeah.
became an issue.
Mm.
It's been rainwater, and rainwater flows down the hill. That's why I'm thinking if it's rainwater,
Mhm.
that's the issue. The infrastructure from the bottom down to the river is the issue. That's the issue in the town, taking the water away. The infrastructure needs to be fixed and something going. And I'm gonna say immediate, we've been talking and there's been things going on, the immediacy of it. It's all written down since 2020. Is this immediate? I don't see this as immediate at all. Yaron, you were at that meeting and I spoke to you at that meeting. I'm still waiting for an answer.
We have an answer to the problem, was implementing the answer is what you're talking about now.
And how many more years though?
We don't get flooded. You're not taking my house from me. We don't get flooded. We're on enough of an upgrade towards King Street. Now, I looked out today and I can see pipes spitting water out and the park's not flooded. You don't have to have a flood in the park. That park is always flooded. I have pictures of my kids that are in their 50s skating there as children, little kids.
Yeah.
The park is a beautiful park. We don't want to eliminate the park. And that's why I asked you where this, on that diagram, it looks like that box is down in the playground. We call the playground park, called swimming pool.
It wouldn't, it's a representative box at this point. Could it move to ensure
Oh,
that?
we don't want it up the hill.
No, we're not suggesting that either. What I'm saying though is that this blue box might show up in a detailed design phase. It would be moved to a spot that makes the most sense.
You said you drove around in December and you saw a low-lying area. We haven't had a whole lot of rain since last year.
Hmm.
I mean, this is rain over there tonight. There's no water in the car.
Yes,
And this is heavy rain. So I mean,
we're getting heavy rain, but about 25 millimeters if memory serves from the
we're
forecast.
supposed to get it from 4 to 8. You know, 100%.
And so what does that relate to in terms of a design storm? I'd have to check the graphs. I don't think that would be registering as a 1 in 5. This would be a more standard storm event, I think. Don't quote me on that. But I hear what you're saying for sure. And the goal with any of this would be to keep that park area. Absolutely. I don't think she's asked a question, so I will just give her the opportunity. Please.
Just out of curiosity, another issue we have is the smell of sewage, obviously, along, not at one particular time, many times. So I'm assuming that once everything was separated, that the smell would go away, that like there'd be no opening, like there are manholes that are opening now into the combined system. I'm assuming once it's combined or separated, it would eliminate that. Is that fair?
You wouldn't have catch basins like you do now connected to the sewer system. But there'd be manholes with lids on them, if you saw lids, it wouldn't be raised. So if the odor's there and there's potential for odors, you know, it's a sewer system, so there's always potential. I'm not aware of the odor issues you're having now.
Well, that's a biggie, Aaron. That was major. You couldn't breathe in the town of Windsor. They had celebrations downtown and public coming in. And the biggest complaint was, my God, the thing really stinks. And it does. I mean, and it lingers. It's not just today because it overflowed today. And I'm surprised at that information.
I think it's forms of sanitary too.
Well,
Yeah.
You wouldn't have that, like the goal of this is to get rid of those backups. So get rid of surface water or combined sewage on the surface, right, backing up out of this. You know, the pipe that we're showing here, next slide, the Cunnable Creek pipe specifically, you know, that's a separated sanitary sewer now that's flowing, right? So can we predict with 100% certainty at a conceptual phase if there will be a complete reduction in odors? Probably not. Some of that would come out in detailed design as we redesign sewer systems with modern pipes, proper grades, check flushing velocities. These are all things that would come out in that sort of detailed design. What we know is that we have a storm system that is right-sized. Cunnable Creek, when you get to this point, does have capacity for sanitary sewer. And what we've assumed in some of the cost estimates of this Class D, Class C phase is, again, to be determined in detailed design, but you're probably getting some new separated sewer as well. So we've identified those areas and included them in the cost estimate at that conceptual level. So hopefully that helps with your understanding of the question, but it would be something that we would look at as well as you continue to advance street by street, how you're doing that, so those upgrades.
Out of curiosity then, with the modeling that you currently have, is that something you could actually predict, like put into the system to say, where would the most strong odor be, or, you know, like where would the trouble areas be?
We would look at velocities. Normally, and Aaron, please chime in here, but normally if there are lower velocities, you're not flushing the sewer, you're not keeping it moving. That's a risk area. Where there's high temperatures, there's always more risk of those odors in the summer where there's higher temperatures, but not something that we would necessarily plug in this software to be able to predict, but we might highlight areas of concern. Is that fair, Aaron?
Yeah, so the sewer smell is generated by whole sewer. New sewer doesn't usually smell, it takes a few days to get to the point that it becomes anaerobic and generates odors. So if you have a system that's flowing down, everything's flowing, not really get stuck behind, it generally has no odors. But also, if you put a new system in, it'll address all the concerns of maybe some pipes that are flat or unevenly sloped in the wrong direction, and that will help from collecting and storing and making odors in those areas. So that would help all of this problem, because it's a very short distance from downtown to the pump station. So nothing should be in system very long generating odors. It should be pumped out.
The whole downtown stinks.
Because the water's in our basements and on our lawn.
Yeah, I don't know how you've been doing a study here for how many years and you don't know there's odor in downtown.
I've never smelled it myself.
You have an open
You must not
system.
get it in your car.
No, you have an open system now. I mean, you have a great big pipe and on warm days in the summertime, there's, just like you're saying, it's not moving. And then you have all these holes. As you move forward, as you separate, it's a closed system for the most part. It's a closed system. So that you don't get those smells because you don't have catch basins, you don't have big holes for which the odors can, you know, so the system's
I think
closed.
what made the smell was the backup sewer, but not so much sewer in the existing pipe. It breaks all over the place.
And we're well aware that the sewage is backing up, and that's what we've been addressing, is trying to get that sewer, trying to separate that storm, get that moving, either address the sanitary, get it moving as well. So, you know, addressing that backup and having nothing on the surface would be a big benefit as well. I know you had your hand up. I don't know if there's another question that you had.
I got a bazillion questions.
Fair enough.
So
Fair
if
enough.
you were to separate
Hmm.
the lines, is there any risk with separated sewage getting water into it?
Is there like potable water, sorry, or just like?
Closed system, can stormwater get into it?
If it was designed to be completely separated, then there'd be a lower risk. You know, as pipes age, cracks develop. So what we call inflow and infiltration from groundwater can always get into that combined pipe.
Nothing through manhole?
If generally how you design a manhole is it's just a little bit proud of, it's kind of the opposite of a catch basin. Catch basin, you want low to get the stormwater in. Catch from the sanitary, you try to just down it a little bit proud so that, yes, some rain could fall on the actual lid, but it's minimal of actual water inflowing from the lid. I have seen examples where the sanitary is a little depressed and yeah, it's a low spot and yes, some water gets in, but hopefully it's designed in a way that that's not a significant contributor. You know, talking about phasing, there would be a lot, there's combined sewer overflow chambers and different ways that we would design temporary systems or phase the project to limit that risk as well. So the goal would be to limit that risk as much as possible and then completely separated again. Some opportunities through inflow and infiltration, but nothing like a catch basin coming into that sanitary pipe. I will just jump around, but I'll absolutely come back to you. Back here on the left, please.
This is a huge project.
Mhm.
And even phase is a huge project. The phases are huge. It's very complex. And I just I'm wondering if the Director of Public Works or the CAO can comment on the scale or the size of this compared to any other wastewater management project in the municipality. And, because I believe the largest we've ever had before is down here along the waterfront, along the other side of the highway with the wastewater treatment plant. So I just want everybody to be aware of the context of this, the size of this, and the complexity of this.
Todd or Troy, and you can speak to some of the public works projects, but again, think of all the moving pieces, which these folks talked about. You go up Stannis and you have a 30-foot deep trench and all the laterals associated with your properties, communication lines. That's where some of the unknowns and the complexity of the project is more than just a new street, a new strip of land. Like the development, the crossing, there's nothing in the way. It's all new. There's nothing in the way. So the complexity of it moving forward, we may have, you know, people's front porches that are encroaching on property lines and all those complexities that you get into when you start to really lay the project out. But size and scale, Todd or Troy, I don't think probably water systems, tanks, you know what tanks are worth?
Just a quick number for the new wastewater plant and the lift station was, I believe it was 11 million. So just to put that into perspective, so 11 million compared to 100 and whatever it was. Yeah.
Yes.
We just wanted to make a few practical points. I think a lot of us would like to know if there's one step forward, if there's a flood this summer, what has actually changed, if there's going to be a change. So last time we had a meeting, there were a couple of recommendations. I'm understanding that from talking about one was to have a dispensary travel where it could be some kind of fluid or chemical of some sort that can help us as community members to spray our basement. Because in my field street, because they're here, we have some elderly people where we have to bring people in to spray the basement because of black mold. We had to spend a lot of money to do that.
So why is there not an opportunity here to compete with the community? Actually, when you go and take your own plastic containers, fill them with the spray in our basements, this is going to happen. What can be done to make some just practical, like changes or little something's being changed? I think that's the frustration. The last time I was here, I had suggested we're going to meet this because there's also people who would come tonight if they felt they might forget if they can be point. And they'd like to have it recorded as well to watch it at a date. So those are very practical things. It's a lot to digest, a lot to process, there's a lot of information, a lot of jargon, and things that people are not understanding. So we're trying to digest some morsels so we actually understand steps. So we're going to help the community by providing a dispensary between Sylvia and the community center. So we're going to show you how to clean the basement. What kind of chemicals should you use? Within the basement. So that actually can always wait. My almost wasn't accepted because I didn't understand what can happen in these situations. There needs to be a lot more education, and as citizens of Windsor, I really need to do more here with this. Please and thank you. But thank you for having the meeting, but we want to hear what is. I'm a single mom trying to keep a Victorian home going. And this was a huge issue, just knowing how to clean the basement so we would not get sick in our home from lack. So we need to understand those things. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So that's education, right? And so the Insurance Bureau of Canada might be somebody that we could approach. Yourself, insurance might be able to help with that.
Can't get insurance.
The complexity for the municipality, regardless of the issue, and I know this is a hard thing to say, folks, is that it's very hard for the municipality, in theory, to be in your homes. Right? We would have an extra level of responsibility, liability associated with it. One of the questions, which I can get into now, is, pumping out people's basements. Right? That's a very difficult thing for us to do as a municipality because of the unknowns. Now, I know we can be criticized for our infrastructure and for what we're not taking away. We don't always know what are in your spaces. You may have an oil spill, you may have an oil barrel that's tipped over. So there's complexities from our insurance providers and our legal side of the things that we need to protect ourselves and to protect, from moving and being in your spaces. And I know that sounds insensitive. I know everybody in this side of the room and the council members want to do as much as they can in response. But we are, as government and as institutions, we are moving away from those things. Fire departments are moving away from those things because of the liability associated with it. But your suggestion there, that is a very good one and one that we haven't thought of. Again, I know the Insurance Bureau of Canada, they are doing pieces like that, and we go to them at times for advice. So that's probably something that we could follow up on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know there was I know you've asked, I think everybody else that has their hand up has asked a question. So I'll go to the, sorry, in the hat there, sorry.
So it sounds like timeline, the big part of the restriction would be funding. If you had the money, whatever, under 15 million or whatever, plus or minus, if you have that and you have reasonable resources, how tight of a timeline if somehow you were able to get the funding? The plan, you think half the money you can pull it off in 10 years?
Yeah, well, funny enough, right now, I would say that that's probably doable.
I think so.
Yeah.
At least the major components that are gonna, sorry.
the access on any board of project different, or potentially use other resources of military, like fire volunteer, to tighten this up in 20 years. Yeah. 20, like, so really, it's, you know, if it's potentially like 20 years, if there's ways to maybe secure financing that haven't thought of different ways of financing, you know, if there's a method it can be done, finding ways to make this actually make it happen in less than 20 years. So I guess my question is it, could it be done with the money and getting different sources of funding, which is a major thing? I guess that's what I want to know. Could this be tightened up if the money is there? You know, that's the thing, this 20-year plus based on funding, and hopefully there'd be some way to go get that money sooner than a 20-year.
I think part of like what Aaron said, if you had the big check up front, contractors would have ability to sort of commit to the project. You know, they're gonna have a wide variety of bids every year. So we try to time those things up every construction season to get the projects in a timely manner so that the contractors can dedicate their resources appropriately. This is a significant project over a significant time period. There would need to be thought into how you actually tender that. Is it a separate contract every year? Is it all at once? If with that significant capital influx at the beginning, you could tighten it up, but by how much, it's tough to say in any given construction season.
And just on the grant side too, I mean, there's different experiences that we will have with different projects, but often the governments are focused on what work can get done within their term. So I'm not suggesting that federal government wouldn't commit to a 10 or 20-year project, but the chances are probably slim. That's why they want to see the phases, and they want to see the work completed so that they can put their flag on the work and say what the government of Canada did for the municipality. Those are sometimes the reality. The other piece is contractor availability. You know, this is a time of boom and growth and development, and we're all hearing it and seeing it where you work and play, and it translates into fewer people doing work. And we've had a number of contracts and tenders that we put out as of late, getting 1 or 2 submissions. Not that folks aren't interested, it's that there's lots of work to do. So there's all that piece that needs to catch up and with the infrastructure demands and the work. And we're seeing that as well, which then can drive the cost. You get single bidders, that can drive the cost. So all these variables, I'm not trying to put a wet blanket on it, but some of these variables impact timeline, affordability, and so forth. Okay, we still in infrastructure. So I do want to carve off 30 minutes. So that leaves us about 8 minutes to answer some infrastructure questions. I do want to address the few questions I have in my pocket about the buyout and the home flood protection program, and give folks the opportunity to be at the back of the room. So we could be a bit focused on infrastructure, maybe in the next 8 to 10 minutes, go from there.
And for those of you we don't get to, we will be hanging around,
yes,
like Mark
exactly.
said. So
yes.
There's opportunities to continue to ask the questions. And the individual in the San Diego Padres hat, I know you haven't, I don't think you've asked a question yet.
I haven't, but I just wanted to add them.
Oh, okay, we can chat later. Over here, you must be sore. You've had your arm up for a while, so please. Go ahead.
Existing infrastructure. Because you take note of that. I think I understand from a meeting in council chambers, 70% of this element, so it's tied into this system and along the wire. For very low.
Basically the whole town
Is,
yeah.
I'm just looking to clarify, is there like, where we are, we get material coming out of mobile branches. Now with those 3 systems, are there like flappers, check valve, something in place on each of those systems so that I'm just wondering hypothetically if something were to happen with the creek, be then flowing back towards outward, vice versa? Or is it like once the system maxes out, that potentially everything sort of swings sideways and then comes back up? And I'm only using Tunnel Creek as a hypothetical, you know, that everything's maxed out and now all of a sudden everything's sort of playing towards one direction.
You still always flow downhill toward the pump station. Just has less capacity to bring things in it. The thought is say, right, we just, everything can't get through the pipe. So it's always flowing downhill. What happens is the capacity is used up in the pipe. So everything's just goes. You can't go in the pipe or can't go somewhere else, it goes somewhere else. So they can pull it by gravity, basically.
Which system sort of ties in like percent? I'm assuming say first in, you take out. And then.
You know, the main trunk along the lake. A lot of it comes in, I don't know what percentage of which goes into it. What percent of which watershed is feeding it, it's a percentage of the capacity.
I'm just curious.
So this station section here is basically in this area, and then the right one, yeah, it basically feeds in through here, into a gravity connection. So just tied into the pipe, we try to get them flows down and right down to the main pump station over here. And Conneval Creek, which is this piece down through here, ties in and is pumped up into it. And then that flows in the pipe down the rest of the way. So it's just because this pipe's higher than the Conneval Creek sewer, pumps it up. This distance, put it into the pipe, it drops into the pipe, and then flows down by gravity down to that pump station down there as well. So those are the main two connection points, and there's other flows that come up through here too, flowing with gravity as well.
Well, don't know the percentage of those two. It's something we could potentially pull from a model. If the modeling would tell us that, it's just off the top of my head, at 70 or 80, I don't want to give you the wrong number. But those are the two major ones, absolutely.
It's not important, I was just curious if there's something flows from potentially getting blocked, so.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe a two-part question. Earlier you were talking about, either like an overflow pond, et cetera, in the parks, and you express that would not be a good idea. Why? What are the risks?
So I guess I'll try to answer that. I don't know if that's the second part of the question, but I'll answer that in kind of two phases. Right now, if you were to just create a pond, you have combined sewer that would be stored in that pond. So it wouldn't just be clean storm water, it would be sewage.
And what's the
Public health concerns, if someone were to, be exposed to that, there'd be odor because that water is going to sit there.
so to our health?
To health,
So
absolutely.
my second part question for the municipality. Last summer, Mark and Mr. Rashad there have expressed there's not much concern for the percentage of sewage with the stormwater. Seems the municipality didn't want to put up signage or block off this sewage water. But we have CBCL saying it is a risk to our health. Will there be any change this summer when we do flood? Because I think we've all witnessed many folks playing in the water, markets going on, days after the water.
So, again, I think I said, we had to change our mindset. Traditionally, a municipality wants to promote and advocate these beautiful green spaces for which they are the majority of the time. But they're not that at certain times. So we've switched our signage to have more permanent signage to warn people essentially all the time of the potential of the risk, even on sunny days. So we feel from signage, hopefully we address that. And then we have our QR codes, which just allows you to kind of dig into a little bit more information.
How many signs are currently up?
Well, I think specifically we have signage, on the street with respect to the potential flooding. Sure, I think I've seen those on Stanton Street, there's some signage there to warn people that they could be entering into an area that is exposed to flooding on a regular basis. And our signage around the lake is similar in nature. That says you are participating in an unmonitored area or a recreational area or an area that we monitor occasionally, but it is not defined beach or swimming area, which requires another level of testing. But the testing that we do is help to guide people in their own decision making, whether they want to be in there on a sunny day or not. Now, with respect to lake is closed, park is closed, I think our policy right now is 48 hours after an event.
So you will be closing the park?
We will be closing the park when there's standing water, and I think our policy is 2 days after standing water is in place. Our recreation folks aren't here tonight, but we try to go to Canadian Parks and Recreation Association, try to look for different models across the country that guides us into how we manage these spaces after the event and when people can
So
re-enter.
do you think this is something that you should have done last year?
And listen to that, Mark, for you.
Yeah, sure.
So
I'll answer.
right now, what happens is most of that water is surface water in the park. There is some combined sewer come out of select few manholes that come up in the street, it's mixed. If you're gonna put a storage pond in, we're actually gonna divert combined sewer.
My question wasn't really about, that was kind of like a setup for.
But there's a difference,
this
there's a
question.
difference in the water though. So the water might just be combined sewer going into that pond in the future, not surface water mixed with combined sewer, so it's a different beast. So you're no longer diluting it at all, just, it could be a very, concentration could be a lot different.
I'm talking about this summer when we get flooded and that water
Yeah.
in the park will be sewage water.
It could Be surface water mixed with some combined sewer, yes.
So it will have
If it's,
feces in that water.
yeah, the
Yes,
access that was,
yes.
yes.
Thank you.
So to answer your question, we've tried to improve on that, and we're trying to respond to not only the public's needs, but the reality, but also, again, try and maintain some sense of usability and promotion of these spaces. So we've tried to switch our mindset and to do that. So we do have policies that we have not had before, and if we have to improve them, we will. But we're trying. Other examples, again, Canadian Parks and Recreation as an example, to try to feel or try to find out what other communities are doing with these spaces. Yeah. Are we getting away from infrastructure, Amanda? I did want to just kind of maybe close the group infrastructure so I can kind of get into the group questions and then get to the back of the room. Is this infrastructure?
No, I'm actually going to inquire more about the functionality of the QR codes and signs in the public awareness campaign that has not occurred. With regards to signage, so I would say that.
Yeah, so we could do a better job at promoting the signage.
Although I'm happy to speak about it now.
Okay, so, sorry. Thank you, gentlemen. You're gonna hang around.
Absolutely.
We are gonna cap this at 8 PM. So you're gonna move to the back of the room when I'm done here and feel free to, and there's also the comment cards as well, which we'll make sure you get around. Amanda.
So, when I was, nobody talked to anybody about this signage that any of us living there are aware of, we just happened to notice it, but has the municipality conducted any type of a public awareness or education campaign to even let people know that this particular sign is? Number one. Number two, have we determined wording for the signs that are being put up in Victoria Park? Will they be more sufficient than just simply park closed in a pylon? And three, the QR codes on the lake signage, they've never actually worked. So you scan them and they just take you to the stormwater document. They don't actually tell you what the status is, which is what they're intended to do and how they're used in other communities.
So
Are we doing something with that, or is this kind of where we stand now? Just sort of a half full there.
well, that's your opinion, so that's fine. The QR codes, so they do take, the QR codes are working, they're just not,
They will take you to the municipal website,
okay?
to the stormwater document. They don't actually tell you, they say they're gonna tell you the status, the CSO status is what they say on it.
For the water,
But however, they don't take you there, they just take you to the stormwater document, which doesn't really tell
so
you.
we could improve, in sharing our test results. Now, just on the testing of the lake, again, we are testing it for the convenience and the awareness of people that want to use that lake. It is not a public beach or a public swimming place. That requires additional testing on a more regular basis than what that lake is. Internally, we talked about, do we close the lake, before we do the testing or after the testing? I say, close the damn lake when we have a known CSO event. We'll do the testing and figure it out later, whether it had levels or not. Close the lake, because that's what was happening for the first little bit. Our folks were going out on the Saturday, we had the rain on Friday night, they're going on Saturday getting the test, lab doesn't open till Monday. Just close the lake. So that will be our approach going forward, but I think the suggestion is that we would share the test results after. Again, we will do that, okay? Did you have a number 1 and number 2? We did a number 3 there.
Public awareness on what the signage actually means in and around Sosanis, because most people aren't aware that it's there. A lot of people don't have any clue what that means.
What that
They
means.
really don't, like children would have no idea what that means.
Okay, I assume those are, industry standard signs that you picked for a street that, so.
There's nothing really
so
warning people of
education.
CSO there, right?
Okay, that piece, right. Now, I think we were trying to respond to, the street having water and the concern from people that, until we arrived on the scene to close the street, that people were just rushing through there and doing their thing. And whether it was a risk to the driver or the public or so forth. So,
I was more talking about the next day when there's little kids
What?
rolling around in the grass that had,
Yeah.
we know what, in the day before.
Yeah.
And the lack of concern from the municipality about that.
no lack of concern, but
The last 2 years, I haven't seen a single thing done there.
we are trying to improve on that, and we are doing. Okay, so maybe, oh, Denise, yeah, I do want to get to these questions, yeah.
Well, it's just, I got a letter today, so I wanna know what grant or program that, West Texas, or to help pay. And, he advised, there's a flood risk infrastructure investment program. Are we involved in that?
Yes, we are.
Are we involved in the provincial capital assistance program?
ECAP, yes.
Are we getting any money from the growth and renewal for infrastructure development program?
Renewal, I'm trying to think, that's a new one, Tim? Todd, Troy, you guys, not 100% sure, but we can.
I'd like
send
to
you-
know
Yeah,
if those are,
yeah, new programs
maybe not.
and revised programs are constantly coming out and we're being updated and so forth. I think to the Aaron and Alan's point, Class D, Class B, which you mentioned, we always want to be in a position of being shovel ready. And we're talking about Stannis and stormwater here today, but there's other projects, so we want to be in a position to take advantage with council's approval and endorsement, take advantage of these programs when they come along.
They're here.
Some are here, and some of them we are participating in.
John Lord said so.
Very good. Okay, I have a few questions here for those that had sent them in. I do not have the authors. I'll do my best to address them. And then I do want to give us the remainder of the time in the back. So the next question was around the bio question. And folks, it says here, residents have been consistently emphasizing the urgent need for bios to help them leave this area. While we're waiting for information on potential funding, I would like to hear directly from each counselor about whether they support the bios. The past 4 years have been incredibly difficult, and knowing the council stands behind us with these bios would offer some much needed relief and reassurance. So I'll leave those conversations with you and your counselor. But I will say that we will keep the bio program in front of council, along with, I think what we could define the bio, and don't take offense with these terms, but a strategic retreat is what a bio typically is, where whether it's us or the property owner decides the best option is to retreat. So that's a retreat. Our home flood protection pilot program will define that as a home improvement to improve the flood resiliency of your property. And of course, there's the infrastructure piece. So the bio will stay in front of council, but no decision as of yet. The next one is around the policy again, and it's specifically about the use of the municipality's reserve to pay for the bio program if the federal or provincial government doesn't come to the table. Now, we do have more recently a response from the federal minister with respect to the disaster financial assistance program, where they basically said, talk to the provincial government, because we send the money to them, and they're the ones that administer the program. So there's a little bit of dialogue, that now has to be renewed with the provincial government, now that we have this letter from the federal government. Yes, it feels like a little bit of runaround, but we will pursue that and see if they will come to the table collectively for the buyout. They have not as of yet. So that's a little piece of news. The last question here in this section here, CSO buyout, or CSO buyout. Moving forward, will the municipality consider implementing a plan to help pump out the sanitization in affected areas? So will we pump out basements and interiors of homes? I think I've answered that question. There's a lot of risk with the municipality doing that or our services. Likely not, folks. But if we can push the limits of our support, we will. I know it means very little for us to put a dumpster on the street after the event, but those are things that we can do. You've talked about the educational piece, which we could pursue, but being in your home and doing some of that activity has more inherent risk for the municipality because they're not our environments. They're your personal environments.
Why is it not still the case that other fire departments in West Canada do it? And if so, why can't Windsor start it again? It's all one municipality now?
I think for the same reasons that I've mentioned and the reason why folks are moving away from it. I'm not aware of any fire department.
Well, I found on my front doorstep last July 11th with 5 feet of water and heard fire department pagers for Brooklyn and Hansport being paid out to flooded basements as we were trying to get somebody to close the road. So
Jamie, probably don't speak to that, but I used to have fire CEO with dispatch. There are fire departments within the province, but actively always.
In the province, yep, and some of them have more independence than some of our fire departments do. They have their own.
is it not happening in West Ham? Is it not happening in Hansport and Brooklyn?
I'm not 100% sure if it is. We're not. Hansport has had some occurrences in the last couple of years. I know they have historically in the past, but for the most part, I think the chief.
It happened last July 11th.
Yep.
So that's pretty recent when they wouldn't come down.
Yep. Now, one time we talked about the creating an inventory of supplies that people could come and get. And, you know, my risk tolerance is a little lower than most, probably not a great thing for a CAO to say. But, once we do create a program, then you have to deliver it. And you have to make sure that you are delivering what you say you're doing. So it's 10 pumps. They all have to work. They all have to be available. And then there's a level of responsibility that comes with doing those things. We have to think through those programs, before we do.
So I really understand the liability within home and stuff like that. Did it ever happen like on the street, like on Stan Street, during the CSOs, like it's guys, names or guys right up? There'd be like some type of suction there, like whether it's a, I don't know, fire truck or whatever, sewage, I don't know what terminology I'm saying, but
Yep.
there's something that at least try to suck up some of that, because when the water, like when it stops guys, right? The street like drains quickly, so if we could get some of that volume going, I mean,
Yeah, no, that's a good question, but I think Aaron then would have said, I think he had an extra zero there that he shouldn't have had. But one of them was those pumps moving one Olympic-sized pool every 7 minutes. So that's the size and scale of the pump. But then also the capacity and the space for which this water has to go. And that's why these pipes have to be so large. So, not to sound disrespectful, but that is literally a grain of sand on the beach, having our suction truck there during the event. Because it's just such a high volume of water. And Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just such a high volume. Okay, Amanda?
Speaking to discussions around buyouts and speaking to the province, speaking with the province, have the municipality undertaken to contact Premier Houston or MLA Sheet Bouchard to make inquiries as to further amending that January amendment to the residential resource property taxation regulation. So what they did under that was they basically amended it, and I've got all the information on it, but they amended it for those wildfire. Have we undertaken to contact them to ask if further amendments can be done to expand that class person?
We have not.
Is it
We've not received direction to do so. It might be something, that the municipality could ask for. Yep. Okay. All right, the next question, again, these are all kind of CSO bio folks. I have 3 or 4 more here. We've heard that infrastructure upgrades will take several years. How will the municipality support the residents impacted by CSO flooding in the interim? We've kind of addressed that. Probably haven't given the answers you're looking for, but hopefully there's been enough discussion around that. Does the Windsor Aquatic Center have pumps to manage CSO flooding? And is it tied into the system? So lots of discussions about this in the past. So the municipality has a sub pump underneath the pool, because the pool is more or less a glorified above ground pool within a hole in the ground. And yes, we have a chamber in there which acts very much like your sub pump if you have one in your home on a sunny day. Because of the water levels within the ground, the water feeds into that chamber and it is pumped into the system. During storm events, don't think our pool has flooded, but sometimes when we drain the pool, we dump the water onto the grass when we pump up the pool. Okay, not necessarily CSO related. Home flood protection plan, are homeowners still eligible to apply for this? So I think there was the question, and one of you in this room, I will not identify you, but this question of should I apply for the home flood protection pilot program for a self-improvement, not knowing if this bio is gonna happen. I can't speak on behalf of council, but I would hope, and I don't think, that if council creates a bio that comes down the road, and you've been awarded $10,000 or $20,000 to do your improvement, then you will be disqualified. But I can't say that for any certainty. But I know the people in this room, of which 10 or 12 councilors are here, they're very reasonable people. They want to help you. We will figure it out. So if there is another round of the home flood pilot protection program, for which there is not yet, but if there is, then these are things that we can ask and get assurance from council that if someone does something and then we do this bio, are they disqualified? We will think about that in advance. I think some of you may have hesitated participating in that, with that piece being an unknown. Okay. The next one, will the municipality's new vacuum truck be available to support residents when properties are flooded? I think I've spoken to that. And is council fully aware of the health and safety risk CSO flooding has on residents who live in the flood zone? I'm not sure from a biological point of view, but I know from an impact, I do feel they have. I know some of them have visited you. I think. So I will conclude, folks, because we want to give ourselves some time. Thank you very much. All of these matters will continue to be in front of council. We have another session with them. I think it's the 26th or the 28th, 26th, Deanna's saying the 26th, where they'll be looking at these things, not only, but very likely focusing on the buyout, the pilot program, and ultimately the infrastructure. Which direction do we go? So with that, thank you, folks. This is the end of the public piece. We'll go to the back of the room and we'll be there till 8 or shortly after. Thank you.